The following video was recorded on stolen Aboriginal land. CEDA acknowledges the first people of the land on which we live and work and pay our respects to elders past and present and emerging.
Thank you very much. I heard a fan, that was good. Look, that was exciting. Did you get the medal back or did you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Look, CEDA are very, very proud to be community partners with the City of Newcastle for this amazing event this year. We've been involved in it since its beginning. This year it's obviously moved on to much bigger and better things. It's been quite an amazing event. I think one of the things that was really important that we heard just now was about co-design and the opportunity that exists for business to co-design and see great opportunities with people with lived experience of disability. And we've just seen, what can be achieved when opportunity is there. If we open our hearts, open our minds, and just open our thinking to a much more inclusive way of the way we do things, instead of looking for barriers, and I've heard it said that the disability is not in the person, it's when the disability is when society puts up barriers and stops people being included. If we put those barriers aside and allow people every opportunity to have full access and become involved, great things can happen for the general society. I think one of the reasons that is that CEDA have developed a program which we call DISCO, which is a disability cooperative or disability co-design, and it is basically lived experience consultation where people with disability can come into an organisation and support the organisation right through its mechanisms from management, right through HR services, line management, and within work teams to ensure that organisations understand what inclusion takes and how to support people into the workforce and also support people to grow and develop through that workforce and to become leaders within the organisation. If people with disability are leading organisations and being part of the decisions that are made in an organisation, then that organisation flourishes, and so does the society that it supports. As we've seen, nearly 20% of the population are people with disability. Many of the people in this room have a disability, myself included. And when you have a situation where your workforce is representative of that population, then we have genuine citizenship. So come and see us at CEDA. I'm more than happy to discuss with any organisation about how we can support that level of inclusion and how we can support organisations to do that work better and to take away some of the fear and some of those misapprehensions about what it is to have people with disability in your organisation. And if it took somebody like Dylan Alcott to get you all here, we'll take the opportunity for a free plug. So, by all means, come and see us. We're just in Hunter Street between the Foghorn Brewery and the axe throwing place. You can't miss us. Please miss us with an axe.
And I just wanted to pick up on something that Andrew mentioned, and that's the importance of co-design. We talk about collaboration, consultation, but co-design, I believe, means something more than that, and I think it's a path that as a council we should be going down, and indeed as a community. Well said.
I think also adding to that, Margaret, that when we talk about inclusion, it's really nice to look around the room here. We see a room full of leaders, we see a room full of people with disability, we see a room with people with disability who are leaders, and a room with people who are leaders who probably wish they had a disability now because it's really cool. And I think that inclusion is about not having that stigma and taking away that. When we take away the stigma, anything's possible, and it is about those real conversations. And we're all here in the same room, so it should be easy to do. If we have those conversations and just realise, we have lots of leaders here with a disability. So, you don't have to, it's not a charity thing, it's not your good works to do this. It is about inclusion and what's possible when we do include.
While you've got the microphone, I just did want to touch on something, and a beautiful young woman up the back spoke about it. How do we make the workplace accessible for people with an invisible or, you know, so-called hidden disability?
That's a really good question. There are many ways, and I think one of the first is it is about being honest and being able to ask brave questions. But I think rather than asking the questions about how do I support a person who has an invisible disability or a less visible disability, I was accused of being high functioning one day, and clearly a mistake. But from that, I heard somebody talk about they weren't high functioning, they were high masking. And I think that's a really interesting term, because if we are in an environment and we have a less visible disability and we don't feel safe in that environment, then it is very, very hard to disclose. And I've talked to people who have worked in organisations for years and never disclosed that they have a disability or that they have any particular needs or any additional consideration in their workplace. So to be able to ask yourself a question as a leader, is this environment that I manage or that I operate, is this a safe environment for people to disclose? So putting it back onto yourself rather than onto the individual is probably a really good place to start.
I might also add to that. When I was first elected in the Parliament, the man looked down his nose at me and said, "This is the oldest Parliament in New South Wales." And I said, "Yes, but there's a lady in that chair over there and we're going to make it accessible." And at the beginning I was fighting alone, and it was a really, really hard battle fighting alone. And now we've got a working committee of people with disabilities who have now put their hand up, who weren't necessarily there in the Parliament before, but we made a comfortable space, and also our allies. So we've got 12 of us who get together really regularly, and it's not my battle anymore, it's a shared conversation about creating change. So there's people, 1 in 5 of us have got a disability, they're in your workplace, they're sitting beside you, they possibly haven't outed themselves yet because they don't feel safe. So having that conversation to make it safe and proud to have a disability, let's move forward into the new possibility, because it's much easier fighting together, and that's Dylan. It's not about I, it's about we.
I do want to point out that we have another game changer here, ladies and gentlemen, obviously. Liesl, how difficult was it for you to step into this world that you are currently in the tough game of politics? What are the barriers that you've seen there?
Well, it's interesting. I was a Paralympian, so I've known Dylan. I've competed in 7 Paralympics, 5 as a basketballer and 2 as a sailor. So Dylan and I have shared a lot of good time in that food hall together. And when I changed from basketball to sailing, I joined the Labor Party because I want to give back to my community. My dream was not to be in the Parliament, and then all of a sudden sailing wasn't in the next game, so here I am. As a candidate, you go out door knocking, but because I already had the profile as a Paralympian, people knew who I was. So I only had 3 people say, "You can't be a Member of Parliament and have a disability." And every now and then I door knock and they still say, "How can you have a disability and be a Member of Parliament?" But I think bringing people along that journey, when the Labor women turned up to door knock with me in Bogan Road in Ethlon in their high heels, they were way more disabled than I was. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my goodness, I hadn't met them before. These are my people. So I feel like I'm in there, and having played wheelchair basketball in the men's league professionally in Europe, that's nothing compared to fighting with people on the other side of the Parliament. So sport gives you a whole bunch of skills, and it gives you a whole bunch of teammates. I mean, I've got a photo, I haven't got a gold medal at basketball, but I've got a whole bunch of teammates beside me who also shared those experiences. Shelley and I, Brad Ness is an old mate of mine who had his leg cut off by the rope. Shelley and I have got these socks that have got chicken's feet on the bottom. We call ourselves foot models. There's all sorts of, without wonky feet, but there's all sorts of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that makes you stronger as a human being, and all those supports of the people around you, and the people around you who understand and back you up. And I think that's those allies beside us are super important, and to have those allies in the workforce who are asking us to come into places of employment and supporting us on the journey there with all our differences is super important, because I know that Parliament is a supportive place where I'm meant to be. And it's also really interesting. I got into Parliament and I was in the office like 7 o'clock on a Friday night, the phone rings. I learned not to pick it up. But there's a guy from Orange who's blind just saying thank you for being in the Parliament. And so it's also really important that, and Dylan spoke about it as well, that it's not just entry point, it's about creating opportunities and pathways for us to be leaders. So we are at the table and making decisions for change.
Thank you so much, Liesl. One final question before our special.
I'm Caitlin.
Okay, I'm Dylan.
Let me just say that your speech really inspired me. and that like it made me want to achieve my goals. Like I really made me wanting to become a performer, and I've also become a DJ and like.
Come on, DJ.
Yeah.
You've got to play Ability Fest when we bring it to the Lord Mayor. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got someone from politics, Teshi, all we need is $1 million in a tiara, alright? So, thank you, love you, Teshi.